A violent Venezuelan prison gang known as Tren de Aragua has expanded its territory to at least 16 U.S. states, an area that includes half of America's population. That's according to several media outlets. Homeland Security officials were warned last week in an intelligence memo about the growing presence, most recently in Montana and Wyoming. The gang already has footholds in several states. Officials say the gang's arrival is tied to an increase in migrant populations. President-elect Donald Trump has said cracking down on the gang is top priority by historic mass deportation.
I will invoke the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 to target and dismantle every migrant criminal network operating on American soil. And if they come back into our country, it's an automatic 10 years in jail with no possibility of parole.